If you've not had a chance to listen to this video's gone viral, and this is Miss Jillian, and she talks about protein. Now, if you don't know who Jillian Michaels is, she was one of the first trainers on The Biggest Loser. A celebrity trainer does not need qualifications. If you take a look at her certification, I've done this for my first book that I researched her. I had to talk with lawyers because I actually used her name, and they said that I couldn't because it's you can get in big time trouble. So I had to dance around that. But doing research into her background, she took an at-home certification. You fill it out, you send it off, and then it gets graded, and then they give you your score. It's an at-home test. So essentially, think of like the NASM proctored right now at home, but you have books and you can contact people to pass it. So that was her qualifications. Now, in order to get chosen for this show, you have to have a bombastic personality, and she fits the mold. She is unique. She's fiery. You couldn't find a better representation for the stereotypical trainer on that show. So she just killed that part. And as we've talked before in the past, how it works on the show is you're working out anywhere from 6 to 8, sometimes more hours per day. And when you do that, you're going to have extreme amounts of fat loss, weight loss as well. And so calories in, calories out, especially when you have a doctor on staff and you're working out 6 to 8 hours, you're going to have amazing results. So what happens is you get this platform, you're going to start getting supplement sponsorships. You're going to start getting a lot of publicity. She's been on shows. She's been on magazines, Trainer of the Year. So your ego really starts getting big. I personally do not know Jillian. I just know her role of a celebrity trainer. So like I just picture her as an actress, really, where she is a personality. But when these personalities come out and say things that are potentially detrimental to our clients, that's where we need to butt in. And it's challenging because I want you guys to take a look at, let me see if I can do this real quick. It might be too late. Let's go with, get it in time. Can you guys see this? Nope, I missed it.
Yes.
Nope, that's not it. Nope, he didn't. Okay, so Layne Norton, if you don't know who Layne is, he's the individual who should be addressing stuff like this. He has a PhD in how leucine works, which is the branched chain amino acid and the most anabolic amino acid in the body. It's when we degrade muscle, it's one of the ones that's broken down. And he's the expert in that arena. So he spent like 10 plus years of his life learning about protein synthesis, and he's an expert with nutrition. Now, I know Layne personally through our internship program. I was introduced to him from Dr. Chaliwa. He was on our board of education. I say was because he was not very active in the sense like I wouldn't reach out to him nearly as much as I would with Jason, just because I felt that Layne, very, very smart guy, but he's very, perfect word for Layne is very pugnacious. I've used that word before, but he has a chip on his shoulder he's like freaking 300. He wants to kill all the fear-mongering assholes that are out there, whether that's going to be Dr. Fung or Grain Brain Perlmutter. Like he attacks these people because of all the bullshit that they put out there, and he's awesome at it. But with that being said, Layne does, I believe, don't let this jade or have any effect on how you view him either. So I look at him as a very valuable source, but the way that he presents the information can sometimes be misconstrued, or just be very honest. It's hard for people to handle because he comes off as a dick. And so it's hard to take his information in when all he says is you're wrong, I'm right, and you have to listen to me. He does have a great team. I'll give him that. So again, at no point am I saying anything negative about Layne. I just think that what happens is you're going to have someone like Layne come out here, and what he did yesterday is he was just like yes, I've heard about this. And Jillian Michaels, she's talking stupid shit, basically. I'm going to address it. I'm with my family. And he just kind of goes on this rant. It's like, I don't know why you're so angry at the world, but I wish that there were more people who could try to have a civil argument with this. And with that being said, Layne, I know for a fact has tried, but then you just get a lot of these trolls. So that's my 2 cents. Does anyone follow Layne, or do you have anything to add in there? And again, like I said, I just want to make sure you realize I'm not making fun of Layne or anything. I love Layne. I think it's great. Crickets. Is this the first time for anyone hearing of Layne? So we have 14 people in here today. Who, Crystal, never heard of, who else has not heard of Layne Norton before? Never heard of him? Michelle? Who's heard of Jillian Michaels?
Yeah.
And that's exactly what's the problem with the fitness industry, is everyone's heard of Bob Harper and Jillian Michaels. She has 1.5, I think, million followers. And she's the one giving nutrition. Mind you, if she's given exercise advice, it's going to be more in her lane. But now she oversteps and talks about nutrition. So when people will challenge me, like, I can't believe you're telling people not to get a certification. No, I'm not saying don't get a certification. The whole industry is just toxic. And so what we have are people like Jillian who's spreading this nonsense, scaring people. If you haven't watched her talk, you need to watch it. She goes off, and as I talk about in here, she says, quote unquote, that, let me give it an actual quote. She oversteps by saying too much protein leads to bone loss due to the acidity, kidney stones, hard on your liver, colon rectum cancer, breast cancer, pancreatic cancer, heart disease. Too much protein is bad. Trust me, I could give you a bunch of studies, but it would take all day. One, she didn't cite anything. Two, she's not the individual to be giving this type of information. Three, she has supplements that she sells and directs people to her website. So when people put information and they scare you, and then she said, and this is where people lost their shit, is that she was like, oh, well, I could get into the biochemistry, but, I know you guys are going to get bored with it. But then she goes and states this stuff about calcium and taking, and that's exactly what does not happen. So it just tells you that she does not understand biochemistry, and she doesn't have a background in this stuff. She doesn't even have a bachelor's of science in this stuff. She has a weekend cert that she studied. And then what she does is she confirms her biases, probably through doctors and people that she's working with. And doctors are not the people who we should be citing. So I quote at the very end of this one, Alan Aragon, and he has this great post. He says, who's selling these diet books? Doctors, trainers, entrepreneurs, editors, actors, bloggers, nutritionists, naturopaths. It's like dietitians should be the ones giving this information. And so I'm trying a new thing in 2021 because my mind's already there. I want to come up with new content that I can deliver, and people find certain things that I will do as negative. And so I'm going to try a new light. And so I'm going to do this deer thing more and just try to be more eloquent and try to address people in a kind of a nice way. And as they always taught you, who could tell me what a shit sandwich is? You guys
start out with something nice, put what you really want to say in the middle, and then end with something nice.
There you go. So I said, thank you for helping thousands of people lead a better life by learning how to make exercise part of their weekly schedule. You've been an inspiration to many. That's true. We're going to take a look at what people are saying on our thing. But as a personal trainer and teacher of trainers, the folly I see with trainers today is overstepping our boundaries by giving falsified information. The intent may be well, but we need to hold ourselves accountable and colleagues to a higher standard if we want to change the industry. And then I mentioned here, these would be people that we should be citing. So first off, we have Marie, and so if you look at Marie, I'll look at her in a second. She's protein doesn't harm your kidneys. Protein is important for bone health. So this is what's called an infographic. This doesn't mean shit. But what we do today is we look at something like that and we'll share it and be like, oh, this is science. No, the folk who are in academia, like Marie, she writes down distribution according to national surveys, and then she gives comments based off of PubMed studies. So what you do is you take these. So this gives a reader an opportunity to fact check you. Just because you put this doesn't mean that it's credible. So now it's our critical thinking responsibility as learning trainers or as trainers to do our due diligence and fact check and look at this. Just because someone has a title and puts a reference doesn't make it scientific. And that's another frustrating thing I come across in arguments today, just like she said. The science supports me. Where's the science, Jillian? You can't just say that word. I fucking hate it when people say that. Oh, but the science says this. Where's the science? Oh, it's everywhere. Where is it? It's not falling from the sky. I don't see it. Oh, I've done my research. What is research today? Did you go to PubMed like this and type in that reference number? Did you then read the whole full link article? This is just the abstract, mind you. But this talks about how today, increased calcium excretion due to high protein diet does not seem to be linked to impaired calcium balance. In contrast, the data may indicate it's the opposite. So did you know that consuming a diet higher in protein actually helps with your bones? It doesn't have any negative effect on your kidneys. Let's take a look at the ISSN. If you do not follow them, follow them. The International Society of Sports and Nutrition. So they talk about how consuming, which would be 2 grams per kilogram for 2 months, had no adverse on body comp. Down here, it talks about comparative studies with these PubMed citations. No effects on renal, which is kidney or liver functioning. Consuming 2.2 grams per kilogram per day should be your baseline. That's what the current evidence says today. Now, this is for active individuals. Where people are going to extrapolate this data is you take someone who's sedentary and you have them starting to eat 2.2 grams per kilogram. So all that means is just essentially body weight. So if you take a 220-pound dude and he's overweight to obese, the average American in the United States weighs 191 pounds. If you tell him to start consuming his body weight in protein, he's going to start eating the stuff that a rim ad on here. And that's going to increase his waistline. So what could potentially happen is you're going to put him into a more susceptible environment for cancers, high blood pressure, metabolic disease, because of the increase in calories. And so then what people will do is then they're going to link them and say, extra protein equals cancer. And that's our responsibility to look further into the research. So let's take a look at another one. These are some of the top names in the industry. If you do not know who Dr. Helms is, he does a great podcast. This is Omar. He's the head of the podcast. It's called Iron Culture. Fascinating, great stuff on there. Eric is a PhD, and we've used a lot of his ideas for our internship, such as the pyramid that we use. We have extrapolated that with the current evidence as of 2016, and we use that regularly. Dr. Campbell, Phil Campbell, he's a professor at the University of South Florida, one of the top labs in the world. That's where actually credit to Layne. Layne has, I think, 2 or 3 of Dr. Campbell's interns interning for Layne. So Layne does have an awesome team, and I give him a ton of credit because unlike other people in the industry, let's take, for example, someone like Brent Brookbush, who has his own institute. He's a NASM head. He has no one who he consults with. And you compare him to someone like Layne, who does have his own certification. He consults with his wife, Holly, who has a master's in dietetics. He has a team of 3-4 individuals that are very, very smart as well. And he consults with other folk like this. Do you guys know the answer to this one? What is the limit of how much protein the body can absorb at one time?
No limit.
That's the correct answer. No limit.
Yeah.
You'll hear people say it's only 20 grams, 30 grams, and then it's turned into fat. No. Read this this post from Dr. Campbell, and he goes into the citations as well. We misconstrue optimal protein synthesis utilization for protein used. As Jillian said, protein can be used for your hair, your skin, your nails, connective tissue, collagen, lots of other things. So we may only use 20, 30, 40 grams, depending on your lean body mass and size and your workout, the damage of muscle that you created. We may only use 20, 30, 40 grams of that for protein synthesis, of which optimal leucine would be, I think it's like 3 to 4 grams, but it doesn't mean the rest is stored as fat. Let's take a look at Brad Schoenfeld. He's one of the leading researchers in the world when it comes to hypertrophy, and his book goes into the deep benefits in just analysis. It's called a meta-analysis of all the protein literature that's out there, because if you do a great workout, now we got to take a look at the second most important part. We created the damage because we had high tension, metabolic stress at the end. We implemented those mechanisms for hypertrophy. Now we got to make sure we optimize protein intake to optimize what's called MPS, muscle protein synthesis. So he goes, and this is one of the most interesting things about. So this is looking at generally healthy folk, but when we age, the new research out there today is looking at even more per kilogram for elderly population, because of what's referred to as desensitization of the anabolic signaling of your pathways. So think of it like this. If you were to go to a concert, you get used to that loud environment, you leave, you still have that ringing, right? So you're almost desensitized to, what'd you say? You can't hear. So as we age, we're learning that muscle tissue is experiencing the same desensitization, in the sense that you need more of it to cue those pathways. So if you were to look at anyone across the board outside of, resistance training folk, the elderly population, specifically those that are unhealthy and have osteoporosis, that have sarcopenia, those individuals actually should be the ones really consuming more protein. Fascinating stuff when you look at the studies behind that. And this was the last one with best-selling books with him. I want you to take a look at Maria. So she has what's called a Master's of Science. She's a registered dietitian. This basically means that she's an instructor of dietetics, and she also has her CSCS. I love seeing RDs with their CSCS, because typically RDs are female. You're looking at like 99% of females, 99% of registered dietitians are female, but they don't have that CSCS designation. So that's really unique, because you could go to a sports team like she has here, and not only could she be the coach, she could also be the strength coach. So it just makes you that much more diverse. So if you're working with the Braves, they don't need to go spend $150,000, 75 for a RD, 75 for a strength coach. They could potentially put that under one umbrella. So these are the individuals who I want to learn from. And, Marie has a great stuff on here about just the big misconceptions that we hear from our clients about, detoxing and protein's bad for you. And I like this one where she says, when someone makes nutrition claims without references, what's wrong with you? This was my favorite show when sports went on in the beginning of quarantine. And so then she goes over how to use the references. And I think this is really important as a new trainer, because what we do is we don't fact check. And so what she's doing here, she's teaching people how to actually use references. So I really appreciate folk like her that are spreading knowledge in a way that it's beneficial for everyone, and it's not anecdotal or a power of authority. We need more people like Marie in the industry. Okay, so that was my little rant today on Miss Michaels. What are some questions that you guys have about this or anything else about nutrition and so forth?
Coach, the friend that, that I told you in quarantine, he does he goes to a dietitian, and he works out like 6 times in the week. But when it gets to weekends, like he gets to eat cheat meal, and very big cheat meal, like he eats a very big burger and very big fries, and then sweets, and then Coke and everything. and then he don't see results, and he asked me why he don't see results, like just like you said today.
Mhm. Pretty common, right? And so, you know, that's why we, through all of these professionals, we've developed the body mass equation, of which we feel that we're addressing, encompassing everything. So I'm trying to be like that politician almost, because I'm trying to be the moderator and someone who can talk to the hormone people, because the hormone folk and the calorie folk, they just butt heads. And typically the hormone folk are going to be very body positivity, HAES, which is fine. But we need to come together with what the current science says. And we need to, so this is like my rule when it comes to, if you want to have a conversation about nutrition, you got to be able to tell me what the law of thermodynamics is. So energy can neither be created nor destroyed. That's the first law of thermodynamics. And if we can't start with that, we're off to a bad start. Number two, can you tell me what the definition of a calorie is? And that's important, because if we don't understand what a calorie is, how are we talking about a calorie? So it's a unit of measurement. And it discussed about heating up the temperature of water 1 degree Celsius. So understanding what the first law is, what a calorie is. Now let's talk about why you have, and this is, I think, important when you have these conversations, Arim, is flip it back on your client. Because what we will do in these arguments is I start going off on why I'm right and why you're wrong. Vegans are stupid because A, B, C, D, E, F, G. I can't believe you would do this, but I'm attacking. And I want you guys to try this. Walk up to someone who's not wearing a mask with your hands like this and see how they respond right away. Joking, don't do it. It's not going to go very well, right? Because this means fight. So when you have a conversation with someone and you start that conversation by saying, you're wrong because, that's where we get into these arguments, because that person is then going to go look for things that are going to confirm their biases. Confirmation bias over here, confirmation bias over here. I'm right, you're wrong. I'm right, you're wrong. And then at the end of it all, who pays for it? The clients. And I really feel for her clients that are now, and people that are following her. 1.4 million people now believe that eating protein is bad for you, and that eating protein is going to be bad for your kidneys, and that eating protein is going to make you more prone to osteoporosis. But when you look at this equation and you understand total TDEE, what does TDEE stand for? Someone besides Arim.
Total daily energy expenditure.
And that's the equation. So we have our body mass, basal metabolic rate. Basal means your baseline, and your metabolism. So people say their metabolism is slow. That's bad vocabulary. We need to talk about that. Because if you're overweight to obese, your metabolism is not slow. It requires more calories than a smaller body. So let's talk about where that fuel is going to your brain, your heart, your lungs, your liver, your skin, your muscles. But then what's our activity look like? And as we saw earlier, and this isn't a knock to you guys, not a knock to me saying I know everything, because I've definitely been wrong with the calories as well. But people just suck with calorie count. We're not good. And we're, in my opinion, we're even worse with workouts. I got my buddy Jimmy. I always give him shit. He just texted me this morning at 5 o'clock. Oh, man, I'm going to the gym, crushing chest. Jimmy's like 6'2", 155 pounds, no muscle on him whatsoever. And in my mind, I'm like, you're not crushing chest. So his manifestation of how hard he works out is insane, of how hard he thinks he really does. In actuality, it's not that high. And then we have the important thing right here with the TEF. And who can tell me what TEF means?
Thermal effect of food, right?
Yep. And what does that mean?
When you eat food, it warms up your body, and you don't, you kind of get cold.
Okay. So you're correct. I mean, if you, like people who typically will go low carb, people who go low carb will typically be low calories. When you are in a low calorie, your hands and your feet will typically get really cold. And so that could be a sign of a deficit. It could be, and you're right, maybe when we do eat food, the body needs, it's called active transport. So we need to break down that food, but we're looking at identifying specific macros that have a higher quality of
Fiber
TEF.
and protein has more TEF.
Yes. So when you eat more protein, you're going to take an average thermal effect of food of 15 and you're going to bump it up to 30. So you're literally burning twice as many calories. So they've looked at studies across the board of 2,000 calories. And the individuals who consumed, both groups consumed 2,000 calories. This group over here had 30% protein. This group over here, 10%. This one on average lost, it was 5.2 kilos over a 3-month period. So that's an extra 12 pounds of fat loss, but they're eating the same amount. So it would be like Christy and I studying for an exam, and we study the same amount. I get a C+, she gets a B+, because of the quality of the study. So I'm not saying that quality isn't important, because it is. If we were to consume more protein within reason, we will burn more calories. Fiber as well. So that's why we stress eat more protein, have more fiber. And this last one's really important as well. That's NEAT, non-exercise activity thermogenesis. And that is just moving around more. As a trainer, our NEAT would be typically a little higher. Maybe we're walking around more. We can also do things to trigger an increase in NEAT, such as every hour on your phone, you get a reminder saying, go for a walk. If you work in the 9th floor of your building, every hour, get a reminder. It says, walk downstairs, walk back up. I'm a weirdo. So when I was up early this morning, I know it's going to give Brandon nightmares, but I was up at 3:30 and I'm walking around, and this is what I do. Just to give you guys a little introduction on how crazy I am. So I do this with my book. I walk down the stairs slow. I can walk and read fairly well. I'll come all the way down, and then I turn around and I walk back up. And I'll do that who knows how many times. I read 20 pages this morning, maybe 20, 25 flights of stairs. Who's batshit crazy? I am. That's weird. That's really weird. Half of you probably want to get off the call right now. Like, this guy's a psychopath, right? But those are the things that we're trying to encourage with our clients, that I'm not saying you have to be a weirdo, but you battle, for the most part, Americans who have problems with overweight and obesity, mental stuff with how we look and how we feel. Depression's through the roof, anxiety's through the roof, self-image is terrible. We can change that and have a huge impact by doing little things with movement. And so we look at this part. This is just the input-output of the equation. Now we got to take a look at sleep. How is your sleep? If you're getting less than 6 hours, T levels shoot down, cortisol goes up. Your sex drive is going to be shit. Your mindset, which is the next one, is going to be terrible. A lot of people, not a lot of people, I don't want to classify, but typically Americans are not very hydrated. So we're getting at least half our body weight in ounces. So 200 pounds, I should be getting 100 ounces of water. Next one, stress. We are a stressed out nation. Imagine the 14 million people who relied on that unemployment check that the president didn't sign that bill. They're not getting paid this week. Do you think your stress levels are going to be higher or lower? And which leads you into who you surround yourself with, environmental factors. Oh, look at this. I've been doing this for how long? And I didn't see this misspelling until now. Attention to detail, environmental factors. What does it look like when you go home? What does it look like when you're at work? Who do you surround yourself with? Your genetics play a role, but it's not the only reason why you're overweight to obese. Hunger is huge. How you handle hunger. Think of hunger as exciting. Next time you're hungry and your hands get cold, give yourself a high five to warm yourself up, because that's the body's way of saying you're losing fat, you're burning fat. We have hormones that do play a role, but it's because of everything else in here. If you have a metabolic disease, you're working with a doctor. If you drink alcohol, typically your frontal part of your brain is going to be inhibited. You're going to make bad decisions. You're going to overconsume. You don't know how to process hunger anymore. You're dehydrated. You're not going to sleep. Your mindset goes to shit. So all these things are interrelated. And when you take a look at this as a whole, as the nutritionist, which we all are, your clients are going to be really relieved, because we're giving them now a solution. It's not just your hormones. It's not just your sleep. It's a bunch of things. So focus on the body mass equation and understanding this. And you're just going to, not only for yourself, be in a better position, but you're going to be able to help so many other people. What are some questions that you guys have on this, or anything we've addressed today?
Chris, what is your opinion on MyFitnessPal?
It's a great tracker. I like to look at those
For your
apps.
clients.
They're very similar to the handheld BIA. And let's talk about that for a second. Who could tell me what BIA stands for? Anyone?
Bioelectrical impedance, something.
Good, nice job. So bioelectrical, I think I spelled it wrong. Bioelectrical